Are we live? We're live. Hooray. Let's celebrate our last day of usable Twitter interfaces, or usable Twitch interfaces, with a stream. Streaming, that's not how you spell streaming. Streaming, game dev, doing diving gear, I think. Paste. It's been a hectic week. We had a bit of a storm here, and nobody has learned how to walk, so basically had to bulldoze my way home pushing over nuns. And here I am, gonna stream for you. There are about 18 trucks parked outside, and the police sirens are blaring. So hopefully the noise dampener in the microphone does a pretty good job of that. Fixing that. Anyway, today we're going to go ahead and create some technical gear, some high-tech space gear for our space dives. I mean, we're going underwater. We're talking about space technology, not about spaceships. Basically, this diver is not supposed to be a modern diver. They're supposed to be in, like, I don't know, 2450 or whatever. So they're not even actually human. But what we would like is for gear that is recognizably diver gear, but also recognizably not current diver gear. A lot of that's going to come from these hip packs, I think, which turn into, they'll deploy out some fans or something. And that'll be what we get our shift, when we press shift to go fast, that'll be what happens. So here what we've got is a very basic outline that I created simply to test what sort of visual we might be able to get out of it. And I think what I'm going to do is just set that to wireframe. One of these buttons here. This one. There we are. That'll just remind me about it. So you can see that inside of this wireframe there is like a little cylinder thing. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to go ahead and recreate those cylinders, and that's going to set us up for having some kind of technical backpack sort of thing. We're going to use partial transparency on some of these, and it should be interesting. At least I hope so. So we'll go ahead and start with a circle like this one. This is way too many verts for something that's only going to be seen a little bit. So from there we will scale it down and move it. And we are going to, and in case you're wondering, this is not a naked character. It's just that I don't have the suit texture imported. So it's a character wearing a wetsuit. But this is going to be our tank. So we're going to put in a Boolean. Boom. Not a Boolean, my bad, a mirror. Boom. I was thinking about adding a Boolean. I was thinking that maybe I could model it together using Booleans because it's kind of like a technical thing, right? But I've had a lot of bad luck with Booleans, and I'm not actually sure if that'll work. It's probably worth trying, though, don't you think? So what I've done is I've created it off-center and put in a mirror. I'm not actually sure if I want to do that. If I'm going for... we'll do it this way and see if it works. No, we're not. We're going to go ahead and start over. And the reason for that is because I want to model one of them pointing straight up. And then what I'll do is I will model the other one. I'll put them together. As long as that's still on the center line there. Yep. So I don't believe... God damn it, I broke it. Try that again. I don't believe that... that we're going to actually go with a mirrored unit inside of this axis, but I want to be able to use Booleans easily, and I think that's going to involve having this axis pretty stable. So if we think about what the tank's going to look like, I want it to taper down towards the bottom, so we're just going to scale up on the x-axis only here, and then we're going to scale up on the y-axis just a little bit. And then we're going to create a cap. No, that was wrong. I'm going to leave this interior object very basic because I'm pretty sure most of it's not going to be visible. It's just a guide. So what we're going to want to do is select everything and then scale down everything but the Z-axis. And that'll give us the kind of shape that we're looking for. I think that pink is a bad look. Let's go ahead and change the color to something else. If I can remember where the materials are. Tank. And you can see it's inside out. No biggie, we'll flip it. Boom. So this is going to be something that I put on the back of the character. It's not, obviously it's nowhere near being ready yet, but you can see it's basically the right size, and rescaling it is going to be trivial. So from here, we can go ahead and try and create a containment unit for it. And I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for some windows, and then this thing will glow. That's at least the theory. And when I'm picturing it in my head, I do kind of like this look with the brace around the center like this, but I'm not sure it's going to be a good thing to have with like a windowed look, unless the windows are on the sides or in the middle. Well, let's go ahead and try it. We'll just put it together and see if it all works. So we're going to add in a cube and scale it down to something reasonable. And we are going to, maybe I should mark that as like a, well, it doesn't matter. We'll work on it. The big thing about this is that it's supposed to mark the containment area that we need rather than actually physically being part of the mesh, right? I think that this bulge we've got up here was probably premature. I probably wanted to go with a straight shot and then add the bulge in at the end. So that's what I'll actually do. I'll ignore the fact that this bulges, and I will put the bulge in at the end instead. So if we were to extrude these and then scale them down, ooh, too much. There we are. We can create a kind of heavy containment brace, right? You can see how that's going to be responsible for the primary act of keeping the tank from, I don't know, getting hit by rocks or whatever. Now, primarily in a real situation, a real diving kit, you don't have these braces because the tank itself is its own armor. But we are talking about something that might be a little bit more delicate because it's got a lot higher pressure crap in it. So I think it makes sense for us to have a little bit of armor bracing, and that's basically what this is going to be. The question is whether or not the tank is going to be visible through it, or whether or not this is going to completely encompass the tank. So basically, if we were to cut this like this, we could then extrude this side and this side. We're going to cut this twice more, like this maybe. This is what we have. This is what we already have right here, the basic shape. And the idea is that the tank is completely contained within it. I think I'm actually going to delete that inner bracket. And we extrude. We can move the whole thing up. And that's pretty much what we've got for the test model, aside from some shaping. The question is, where do we want to put the visuals for the interior tank? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this a little bit so that it's not symmetric. And what I'm going to have happen is I'm going to have the armor bracing be on the outside. So if we were to making this hard on me, let's try there. No, that's not it either. What a pain in the butt. And then we just move this to the outside because it's going to be the right-hand element. What I can do is I can create a window right here that will be able to see through, and it's kind of like a diagonal window. Do I want to do that? It seems like it wouldn't look very good. It seems like it would feel kind of beady-eyed. Let's go ahead and undo the extensions for a second. I'm just trying to figure out what I want it to look like, and I got to tell you, don't really know. Don't know what I want it to look like. And I think that I want the stripe right dead center down the center. I don't think I want the stripe to be on the sides because I think that would feel weird. I think that would make it feel off kilter. But I don't want that same view where I had that before where it was like box. What happens if I just... It looks like I've got an extra set of faces here. Let's dissolve these faces. I've got too many faces. Delete these faces. Add them back in. I didn't undo enough. That's fine. Not a big deal. We're working with very, very simple geometry. So if I scale these out without adding in additional points, you can see that what happens is we get this kind of shield shape. That might be a good shape if I were to edit it a little bit better and turn this into something that's not quite so jarring on this particular segment, which I can do just by deleting this segment. And then we'll just be like plow, plow, plow. With that in mind, we can sort of have like a shield sort of visual. I think that would work okay. Let's go ahead and add in the mirror. And then move this to the side. Because this is in the end going to be a mirrored setup. I think I'm going to go ahead and delete the interior. Don't need this guy anymore. And we're going to want to put in the window that we're going to be using for counting energy and stuff like that. So we could extrude in, but the problem with that is that it's going to end up damaging our visuals. A better option for us would be to cut like this. And then we can cut here and cut here. This is a little too high. And then we can extrude that in. We don't actually want to fully extrude it though. Let's duplicate this, move it out. Hello? Jeez, okay. And then we'll extrude this in. Not very far, like that. And what that's going to be is that interior is going to be our glow-in-the-dark element, which we're going to do using UV offsets rather than material changes. What the heck? Is the snapping not set to 1? The snapping feels like it's set to like 1.5. That would be very weird. What idiot would do that? But we're going to go ahead and have to keep track of all of the exact locations that we're using. So we have several UV coordinate elements that need to be absolutely perfect. But the question is whether or not this surface should be its own material, and I think it should be. See, the problem is that semi-transparent materials have to be rendered using forward rendering rather than deferred rendering. And the problem with that is that it is not compatible with deferred rendering, and deferred rendering is what I need to do with all my lights and shit. So when I end up with a something that needs to be transparent, I have to make it with the understanding that it's going to not render properly on the depth system. And because of that, what I've done is I've engraved it inside of another object, and I figure there's no chance that it'll render incorrectly unless the camera is like inside looking out, and I don't think it will be. That seems like a safe bet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get these things to be in the right spot at the right time. And we got this problem where it's not actually selecting all the stuff it's supposed to be selecting, but that's fine. If we extrude this with a nice fat brush, you can see that gives us It's not quite right, is it? We need to cut here. That's fine. We'll need to cut the glass there too. That's fine too. That's better. So you can get yourself a little bit of a bulge there. I don't want it on the y-axis though, or on the z-axis, just on the x-axis. That'll do. It looks like I still got it on the... That was strange. I must have punched the button wrong. Like that. And then what we can do is rotate it. Whoop. And move it. G. Okay, so the problem is that my Z and my Y are backwards because I'm too used to Unity. And then we can just scale it up a little bit, but I don't want to... Let's undo that. Scale it up on the Z-axis and then move it. And then rotate it and then move it. I'm not sure if it's going to look good or not. It certainly won't look good like that. Let's put on the auto smooth, give it a little bit of crispness. So this is obviously very thick. It's a very fat setup. We don't actually want it to be quite that thick. So we're going to go ahead and shrink it down considerably. On the top and on the bottom. I think that it's actually too fat here. Well, if I shrink it on that axis, it's not going to work out. I shouldn't have tilted these. I guess it's okay for now. So what we want to do next is make it so that it mounts properly, which I think we'll do just by rough eyeing it. We don't need to worry too much about it being correct. That's a little too much. And then we can cut. Turn on. Oh, we can't turn on clipping just yet. We need to take the whole thing down a notch. There we are. Then we turn on clipping. Grab some faces. And extrude across on the x-axis and then delete the face. No. There we are. Nope, that's incorrect. A little bit better. And then we can soften this up. For some reason, it's refusing to select it. This is certainly making things easy. Hope nobody's got motion sickness. All right, so if we bevel those, just to give it a little bit of softness, you can see that we've got some overlap in the back. Maybe I will just bevel these. No. Trying to figure out how I want this to look, and the answer is, don't know. You know what? We're going to go ahead and work on making the rest of it feel a little bit better, and then we'll go back and figure out those connectors later. So the idea here is that it should basically mount straight to your back. You're not a human, so you don't have to worry about things like straps unless you really want to. And I guess the mounting straight onto your back part we'll just... Nope. No, that's not going to work. It looks dumb. We'll see whether or not it feels as dumb as it looks when I put it into the game world. Anyway, we also have to take care of this rear face, which instead of beveling, we're going to take advantage of the pre-existing bevel and just walk it up a little bit. And then we could bevel here, but we could also just walk it in a little bit. So let's grab some edges. If we can manage to click. And up here, I don't think we want to do it like that. We'll go ahead. I'm going to change some of these limits. If we bump up the limit, we can hopefully get it to feel right without having to do any extra modeling. You see this here? That's what I want to get rid of. All right, well, let's unwrap it because that is the chore here. We've got some serious problems with the way it's going to look if we botch it. Generally speaking, how I unwrap things is largely unimportant, but in this case, it's very important. So we're going to start with just a smart UV projection. But you can see how that ends up creating some weirdness. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put in some cuts along the sharp edges of this element. Just adding in a couple of seams here and there. Is there? No. Mark seam. Boom. Just mark this guy. No, not that much. Interesting. What did I do here? No. Period. That's a strange... I think I over-beveled. Yeah, I over-beveled. That's fine. I fixed it. So, as you can see, it doesn't go where you think it's going to go. We'll just do it manually. No biggie. And now, we need to add the most important set, arguably, right there. And you can see that it continued to cut it up because I said Smart UV Project instead of UV Unwrap. Here you can see we've got the UV Unwrap, and the top is really, really heavy because I forgot to cut here. So we're going to go ahead and cut here. There are other ways to unwrap. I am not terribly good at unwrapping, but I figured I'd show you. There we are. So now we've got all of the pieces as coherent elements. But what we need to do is make sure that our backdrop is located in a very specific place that nothing else is located in. So if we were to grab this guy, move them over to the side, because I don't really care. Turn off the proportional editing. Move them up to the side, because I don't really care. But what I'd like is for this tight eighth over here to be the glowing element, which is in the back. So we're going to try and grab it. There it is. That is it. We can just move it over here and then scale it up. And we'll be using a mathematical thing to make sure that it is glowing at the proper height. We'll basically just have a glow map that is just a block on this side, and we'll move it up and down. It should be very easy in theory, but we have to go ahead and... That was weird. We have to go ahead and name this, so we're going to go ahead and name it Diver B Tank A. Why not? And we'll just hit save, and then we'll hop on over into a Unity. All right. So it didn't show up because it's named something new, and this isn't an exact match. But we'll switch this out for what we're looking for. Boom. And you can see that it's got some issues with the visuals. That's largely because I don't think it's in the right spot. Yep, wasn't in the right spot. So we'll go ahead and just move it. When we bind it to a bone later, it's going to be in the right spot easier. For now, however, we'll just fake it. Now this dither thing was something I was experimenting with, and it's obviously not working. So we're going to go ahead and replace those. We'll start with machine mount. Why not? Just see how that looks. This is going to be replaced quite soon with something more useful and interesting. But we also need to have transparent elements. We got a glass. We'll just use that. Glass. So what we need is this. We're going to have to come up with something a little bit more interesting. I can already tell that the back is not going to look right as flat as it is. Not unless I make it black. So being just this flat surface is clearly not going to cut it. Let's go ahead and add in some detailing so that we don't have quite that sort of crappy visual. Now for tanks, there are a lot of things that you can add that are details. Oh, look at that. I screwed up the edges. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark this as active origin. And then we're going to scale it down to 0. Not sure how I did that, but I did it. Oh, because I was going it on straight x-axis. That's fine. So that should fix that. Now, there are lots of things we can put on tanks to try and show that they are tanky. We'll probably be wanting some dials and some gaskets and stuff. So let's go ahead and turn clipping off and add in some circles. Oh, circles. All right, so I'm thinking we're going to want a couple of distinct kinds of element. Now on the side, we're probably going to want to have a hose arrangement, but it might be internal, partially hidden away. I think that'll look good. And then we're also going to want to have some of these dials on this side. And I think the dials will be partially glowy. That's my idea. So in order to make these dials feel like dials, we got a couple of options. One is to make the mounting element more obvious. So let's start with that. And that'll be our mounting element, and then this will be our dial. Now the problem is that the mounting element is made of the same stuff as everything else, and the dial is too. So it doesn't really feel very realistic. Now what I really want to do is be able to paste it onto the surface using a deform. You know, I think Blender does have one of those. It's like a project to surface sort of thing. But it would require me to make like groups and shit, so we'll do it later if we decide to do it. We're not going to do it now. but we'll just create 3 of these. We'll just eyeball it. And in order to make these feel a little bit less generic, we're going to want to... Can we do it like that? No, we have to do it like this. Oh, can't do it like that. Trying to figure out the best way to handle it is a little bit challenging. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to delete, I think, 2 of these. Let's just delete an entire vertex. Boom, 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 goodbye. And then what we can do is set this up, 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 set this up. And then we'll just bond here and here and here. And then we should be able to just, oop, missed that, shboop, and oop, missed, shboop. Shboop, 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 shboop. And now they have, like, proper spinny feeling elements. That's not how a dial actually looks, though. So let's undo all of that because it's wrong. I know, I'm brilliant, aren't I? Let's just delete these 2. And we'll just do it with one of them. Having it be the same material is not a mistake, but it's hard to see at this stage. Especially given Blender's wonky, terrible camera that has clipping at like a meter away. I'm not sure why it's like that. It's really obnoxious. Anyway, the thing we need to do is delete some more verts. Because it turns out that we would like it to be like this. Hit N to fond the clipping values. N. Clip start, 0.1 meters. Stop that. What? Thank you for whatever the fuck this is. I zoomed to the camera, apparently. That's fine. Thank you. I found it. Okay, so now that's much better. It's no longer dumb. This is one of the things that I've never understood about Blender. Why are their defaults so bad? You'd think that they would take a little bit of care and have defaults that didn't suck. There we go. That's more like how a dial actually looks. Of course, this dial is baked in, but it's okay because when the player gets this close to the dial, it's going to blur just due to the fact that there is a depth of field effect on the camera. More or less. Now we've got to adjust these things so that they look like they're actually on the surface instead of randomly floating above it. This will never look great. I'll probably redo it later when I know what I want a little bit better. But it should look not absolutely shitty. That's the hope. Basically. And then what we're going to do is over here, we're going to add in a nook. And that's going to be full of cable. So just block that in and then shrink it down a little bit. And to add in some cables, we got lots of options, but the easiest option is probably just to go and create a new circle. There it is. 16 is way too much. 8 is more our style. We'll move that into position. Now there are 10,000 ways to try and put cables in something. Like you can use a route, or you can skin a set of elements. We're just going to do the... Actually, I don't even know if this works anymore. It used to be that you could simply control click. I'm not actually sure if that's the case anymore. Why is this not? Oh. So let's find out. Nope. 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 Okay, so you can't do it that way anymore. Blender 2.8 quick extrude along mouse. I don't know what it was called though. Me. Extrude along mouse. Google. To extrude along the normal. To extrude along the normal. To extrude along the normal. No, the mouse. The mouse. I don't want to extrude along the normal. What happened to control click in Blender 2.8? The extrude shortcut is now control in the non-select. Oh, that's fine. I can live with that. Let's just... That didn't work at all. Let's go ahead and just undo that part. We'll put them together at the end. So then we'll just shrink that down a little bit and then rotate it so that it's in the right position. Actually, that's not too bad. That's more or less how I want it to be, because I want it to come out a little bit, but maybe not quite that much. Duplicate it, and then maybe scale by -1 it, and then flip it, and then move it, and then rotate it. And then we're going to want to mate these edges up. So what we'll do is we will do some manual extruding to try and get them to feel just a little bit right. They don't have to be perfect. This feels a little artificial. Let's try and drag it a little bit into place there. Yeah, more or less. And then what we'll do is we'll have this top end, and this one will end in like a nozzle, and then this one will end in moving into the interior of the element. So the nozzle, I think that we'll just go ahead and clear that out and then do it from here. So first we'll get a little bit bigger. And then we will try and just create something nozzle-ish. And then we'll just attach it maybe? That doesn't feel quite right. Let's go ahead and move this whole set up. And then we'll put in a break here and extrude that in. And we'll just bevel. And we will want to create a lock. So we'll just duplicate this, scale it down, scale it up, scale it down. That's going to be our lock. So mark it as smooth, and let's go ahead and see if that feels... Oh, you know what? We need to kind of put in a hook here just to make it feel a little bit more realistic. So to do that, we'll grab here and here, move them in a little bit, And then we will create a band across the surface, which I guess will just duplicate something arbitrary here. More or less. And then more or less. So now we're going to need to unwrap everything again, but the key here is that we don't want to unwrap the middle element. So we're going to go ahead and select it and hide it. And the easiest way to do that is to swear at it a lot. Yeah, Blender responds very well to being sworn at. That's why everybody does it. Right, so there we go. With that in mind, we can re-unwrap everything. We're going to want to re-unwrap everything in bits, but we'll go ahead and just... That's interesting. Oh, that must be... Don't actually know what that is. Let's go ahead and just start with this guy. There. That must be this cable. So let's go ahead and add in a nice cut in the middle of the cable. Mark seam. Just to make sure we can see, yep, that's cut all the way through. We have got no issues at all. So now that that is all set up, what we can do is just hide this guy because we've already dealt with them. And then we can unwrap the rest of these. Boom. So you can see that's pretty straightforward, nothing terribly special about it. The only issue we've got is this unit right here, which just needs to be moved to literally anywhere else so it won't glow in the dark. But if we would like these dials to have any glowing elements, we need to add those in. So what we're going to do is do that exact thing. Going to add in some glowing elements on these dials. So to do that, we're going to re-extrude the dials, but with just a couple of specific faces, these ones. Nope, not the entire set, just this inner set. So I guess the easiest way to deal with that is to hide these guys. Now if I was smart, I would put these together as some kind of just operation at the end, but as I said, I'm not smart. There we are. So from these, what we can do is simply move them over to here. And we can scale them up a little bit. And that's more or less where I think they should be. You can see they're not all pointed the same way. That's going to cause us issues when we try to display them as glowing, because they'll glow in a weird way. So we're going to go ahead and rotate them so they're all C-shaped. That way we know that we're going to get the same sort of performance out of all of them. And now we have to make sure that we didn't accidentally drag along a whole bunch of other stuff. We didn't. All right, good. Okay, so now we've got a slightly better setup. Let's see whether or not this feels any better. Obviously, we're going to have to create the material now. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got a problem where these are really blending in too much, and they will continue to blend in too much as long as they are kind of in the middle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them off to the top. As long as they're separated, I can do something to try and make them pop a little bit. So just see what we've got with that. I don't know what this is. Well, it should all be fine. Let's go ahead and create the material we need to create. So over here in Diver, we're going to need to create a better shader. So create a new Amplify Shader surface. And this is going to be the, what do I call it, reactive pack? Diver status? Air supply? We'll call it Diver Gear. Diver Gear. And of course we'll name it here too. Diver Gear. Now we are going to want to create a material based on Diver Gear. Create material. Chaboom. Thank you for naming it wrong. I love you too. So we're going to go ahead and rename it. And you can see that it is pitch black because we haven't set anything up yet. So what we're going to have to do is set some stuff up. We're going to need some textures, so let's go ahead and put them in. This one will be called Albedo. We'll go ahead and add in a tint for customization's sake. We're going to need to have that's a comment, not a color. My bad. Going to need to have a texture for glow mask. That'll take an offset UV coordinate in the end, but for now we'll just plug that straight into emission. I think we're going to want to add a color there as well. So we're going to go ahead and call this glow color, which we'll set to a nice bright blue for default's sake. The glow mask, we're going to multiply the alpha. We don't even need to have a glow mask separately, do we? Well, we're going to have one anyway. So we're going to multiply the alpha by the RGB, and that'll give us an emission. There we go. So when it's transparent, there's no glow. Up here, we're going to multiply there's our albedo. We're going to want a normal map, so let's go ahead and move this aside a little bit. Add in another one. And let's make sure this is marked as a property. There we go. I think that's everything we want, except we're going to want metallic and smoothness as their own elements. So there are a lot of other things we can do, like add in some ambient occlusion so that we don't have quite as much issue. We could also add in some nice vertex offset to the pipe if we want to make it so that it's kind of wobbling a little bit to show that it's made of flexible material. We can deal with those in a minute though. Let's go ahead and get everything working first. The cores. So here you can see we are glowing bright blue because our mask is missing. So we have to add some stuff in. So we'll start with an albedo. I don't really have any specific setups for this. It's not like I know what I'm doing here. So we'll just add in some arbitrary stuff. I think we've got a machine bracket. That one looks dumb, but we'll try it. We're going to want to add in something small to the glow mask for now. We'll change it later. well, the normal map doesn't exist. We'll just add in the normal map as well. That's the glow mask. Sorry, my bad. Obviously, this is not the mask we want. How's our machine mask looking? Oh, this is not looking good at all. It's all awful because I don't have anything specifically suited for it. So it's just a bunch of garbage. Well, let's go ahead and just darken everything down. We'll figure out exactly how I want it to look later. The important part is that we're going to need an actual glow mask that doesn't suck. Oh, I have the colored band vert, which is pretty close to what I need, except for I'm going off of alpha, not off of color. So what I need to do is open up the art program and set it up. So give me a second here. I'm going to switch you over to Phoenix Wright while I pop that stuff open in the background. And sip on some stuff. It's not water, but it's not water. Just mark that as right mask. And then I'll bring you back in. How exciting. So we want the mask to just be in the right eighth most element. I'm not sure why I decided to clone something when what I needed to do is make it 8 by 8. Boom. And then what we're going to do is just delete. Like this. And we'll save it. There we go. There's our right mask. Very, very basic setup. So go back into Unity here. Look down for the right mask. Drag it into. Oh, we no longer have the SciPack selected. Drag it into something at some point. There we go. And you can see how now the main thing that glows is that. However, we do have some glow up at the top here and here. My guess is that I was a little bit sloppy. And yeah, so my guess is that these are being affected because the glow mask is set up to blur. If we set this to point, yeah, that's much better. So that way it's going to be much better. Now what we need to do is set this up to have a value that decreases, a percentage that moves it down. So let's just get to work on that. In order for that to be the case, we're going to want to add in a new property, this float here, which we're going to call energy. And we'll start that off as a 1. And what we're going to do is we are going to cut the UV mask based on the energy level. So if the UV mask Y coordinate is higher than the energy level, we're just going to get rid of it. I might have it upside down, but if so, it's no big deal. So in order to do that, we're just going to compare the UV coordinate. So we'll grab this glow mask, and it'll be the V coordinate. So do a mathematical comparison. Is there a greater than mathematical comparison in this? I think that's not the way you actually want to do it. I think what you want to do is subtract it and then step it. No, there is something. There is something where it's like a greater than or less than thing where it passes out two values based on whether it's greater than or less than. Is that step? Yeah, this is what we want. So the only problem is that it is just the absolute worst in terms of actual in-program setup. So a 0 is returned if B is less than A, and a 1 is returned if B is greater than A. I don't actually know which direction we want to go, so let's just plug both of them in. And then we're going to just add that into the multiply. Boom, like so. Let's save that. And you can see that right now it is black. which is not what we want. So what we're going to do is just see whether or not when we change... Oh, I forgot to mark it as a freaking constant. As a property, rather. There we are. So when I change the energy level, you can see how it's exactly backwards. Also, I have the dials in backwards, but that's actually kind of cool. Maybe I'll keep that. So all we have to do is switch which of these is A and which of these is B, I think. We may also have to, like, 1 minus the energy. We'll know for sure in a little while here. Oh, no, it's fine. Now, the energy is not critical. This is not a game where you die when you run out of energy. This is like a dash meter, so I'm not terribly concerned with it behaving well. What I am concerned with is I think I want all of those dials to be rearranged. So we're going to go ahead and put them all right at the top. Grind, grind, grind. Yeah, it's better. That way when your dials come in, you'll know that you're full again. Just for kicks. So that is how I want it to glow. Now the other problem we've got is that we don't have any sort of material that's set up for the albedo. Our albedo materials are just terrible. They have nothing even vaguely close to what we actually want to see. So obviously we're going to need to figure out what we want to put here. To be honest, M4, I didn't create this. This is somebody else, but I own it, so I'll go ahead and use it for now. We can change it up later. But that should give us a little bit of at least existence. The other thing is I might want to... I don't know what I'll do with it. I'll figure it out later. The critical part is that the energy works. I don't know why this is so dark. It's really dark. Maybe I'll just use the normal for both, except for that one's red. What happens if I just use something really basic, like... white mask for both. So the only problem with that is, of course, that it's basically white. So there's a lot of things that we are going to do, and one of the primary things we're going to need to do is make it so that we have an actual texture to use with our device. We may put it into another program and paint it. We may try and paint it in Blender. But let's take a look at how it actually appears, just for starters here. So we're not in the character that we're talking about. This character is the old model. You can see how the animations are busted. But we can take a look at how this new character appears. And I think that we are going to need to make the backpack fairly dark, but maybe not, because there's no lights on it. So yeah, I don't see any problems. There don't appear to be any issues with the see-through window clipping. I think that we're going to be okay. And you can see that as we get closer, it blurs. So we don't have to worry about it being too high fidelity, because it's not, you're not going to get a chance to see it that well. Yeah, good. So with that aside, there are still several pieces to this diver that I need to create. Most importantly, I think we need to add the fins in. So let's go ahead and just put in some nice quick and dirty fins too. First thing we got to do though is bind this to the skeleton. I don't remember which direction the binding goes. It's not that way. We're going to go ahead and just put in automatic weights for now. And the automatic weights are going to be wrong, but we can repaint them. It's pretty easy. So weight paint. Hold on, let me move. I don't need to keep looking at this shader. There we are. Oh, come on. Stop clicking on the wrong button. I'm so tired. Why am I so tired? There we are. So if we take a look at what sort of setup we've got, you can see how it's got some stuff going for it. We want to bind it 100% to this bone, like completely. Nothing else is even vaguely correct. So the auto normalize will take care of it as long as we paint it up. I think there are easier ways to do this, though. We're kind of doing it the silly way. That's fine. If you're not using Blender in the silly way, why are you using Blender? How are you using Blender? So the easiest way to see whether or not we are doing the right thing is to simply scale this bone. It looks like it's correct. I don't see any issues. If there are any other things bound, they are clearly not interfering. And fuck you too. There we are. I really hate this. How do I fucking deselect the bones that you force me to select? I only want one at a time. All right, seems correct. So, I mean, it might be something like on the shoulder bracket or something. Yeah, but who cares? It's all good. As long as nothing is popping out. And I'm sure we'll find out if it is. So now that it's bound to the skeleton, we shouldn't have any issues. But we do need to create ourselves some fins. We're not going to try very hard. The fins we had before are they're basically fine. But we still need to create them. Let's create them as a plane. So we'll just move them off to the side here and then mark them as, and mark them as a mirror. Come on, asshole. Go away. Go away. Go away. Go away. How do I make you go away? Not close enough. So the fins that we need are just going to be basically attached to the toes, and then they'll have some kind of shoe sort of thing. But we'll go ahead and make sure there's some bending. So fins are not entirely straight. They look kind of like this. Now we don't really have any good setup for creating this shoe, so I'm not going to bother. We're going to just go ahead and skin this. There we go. It's all skinned. We're going to need to put in some cuts so that it will bend properly, like that. And we're also going to need to put in a element that we're going to make it glow. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and unwrap this. Boom. And then we're just going to take this one set and unwrap it alone. Scale it. Good enough. All right. So that should respond the same way to the glow events. Now we just need to actually attach it. It's the wrong way. There we go. And that should just work. So let's name it. We'll call it Crap Fins. So we hop back over here into Blender. We're going to have to recreate Diver B by dragging it back into the scene. Otherwise, we'll have to do some annoying work trying to tie things to the correct skeleton. It's easier just to drag it back in here. So just delete this diver, goodbye diver, and have this diver come over to play. I believe it is currently located at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, there it is. Just move it into place. Now, we've got a bunch of crap in here that's useless, so we're going to have to delete it. So I don't need this, don't need this, don't need that, don't need this, don't need this, don't need this, deleted. There we go. So with that in mind, we should be able to drag the correct materials onto these things and get going. Get going meaning look at it. It's not actually animated or anything. We'll animate it some other day. We're coming up on the end of what I would consider for today's stream because my brain is not working properly and it's a little bit challenging for me to continue to stream when I'm an idiot. So there's our diver gear. And then we've got diver. And then we've got glass. Was that under diver too? No, it was under glass. Perfect. So now, aside from the weird pattern that it's got, what we've got here is energy. And as we decrease it, you can see that it decreases on there as well. We may want to flip that. I kind of want it to decrease towards the middle. So what we're going to do is we're going to just pop back over into Blender and just invert that. There we go. Oh man, I have got to get a good material. The problem is that in reality, diving tanks are basically just brushed metal. They are the most boring material on the planet. And that might be what we want here as well, but we would have to put in a lot of extra decorations to make it feel right. So, I mean, maybe I'll have like a brushed metal back, core texture, and then I'll be able to put on an alpha masked detail set for like screws and straps and shit. Not really sure. Greebles, as it were. Obviously, this is not going to cut it. It's just wrong, and it looks bad. This, I don't know what normal this is from, but it's basically flat, so we'll use that. Yeah, so I got the materials. I just need to get the meshes under control. It's strange. Some meshes are super easy for me, and then some meshes are just impossible. And I think it's a matter of whether or not I have a solid idea of what it's supposed to look like. And in the case of this mesh, it doesn't exist. So I don't. Obviously, this is not going to be good enough. We'll have to go in and recreate it later. It's pretty crap. But I like the basic shape of it. I just need to think about how I want it to be. Maybe what I'll do is make it like a Krogan humpback sort of deal rather than a split. That might be really good. But I'll either do it next week or off camera because I'm done for the day. Thanks for your time, everybody. Have a good one.